Hey everyone, what's going on? And welcome to an all-new episode of The One Team We Agree On. I'm Kyle.
I'm Jillian.
And we welcome you to 2023. And as we get started, we have our very first guest on this show. This man is a stalwart in the union podcast and social media community, and he needs really no introduction, but ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to have the man, the myth, and the legend, the host of Maryland's #1 Philadelphia Union podcast, and the host of the Free Kick Pod, Mr. Todd Lewis. Todd, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jillian and Kyle. I was curious. I was like, "Where's he going with his intro?" Like that was a really good introduction, and nobody's went that in depth with it. So you get another checkbook in my book, Kyle. I mean, I feel like I need another book for all the good things you do, right?
Well, no, again, it's an honor to have you on, and like we were talking before you hopped on, this is our very first voyage into interviews, and we started this podcast vlog, YouTube been on, the podcast. What we have 3 principles: love, life, and DOOP. I mean, and so we wanted to start that. You obviously were one of the people that when we were talking about doing this, you were one of the first people I reached out to. And I think it's interesting that, you from day one, I was like, how can we do this? And you were giving us ideas and everything to help us kind of get this. So 2023 is now here. First thing I said is last year, I think I was your first one for 2022. Now I'm like, let's get Todd on. Let's, really have a really good conversation here.
It's funny how that all comes full circle, right? You're right. And I looked at it, I was like, when did I record first in 2022? And I was like, dang, January 16th is the first episode. I was thinking like, okay, we get into the new year, new episode, but dang, 16 days into the new year is how long it took for me to have a guest on. And like I said, yeah, you were the first guest. So it's funny how those things come full circle.
Yeah, and it was funny. I think you were like the one who was like, hey, you want to come on? I'm like, I'm coaching. So it was like, we finally figured a time that worked out. So, but again, like today, we got a time that worked out on our schedule. So let's go ahead and get started. Our first question, I want, and for people, I know a lot of people that listen to this show, a lot listen to your show, but there could be some people for the first time they hear the Free Kick and hear about you. So discuss how the Free Kick came to be, and how did you come up with the name Free Kick? I'd never asked you this, but I was always curious. So,
Man, that's a good question. So, spoiler alert, you did send me a list of a lot of the questions you guys are going to ask. So I looked over them, and how the name came about, honestly, I don't know, honestly. So for people that have been following the podcast, it started out as the full-time podcast, I believe it is, with Todd Lewis and Tyler Elliott. And so that podcast, we covered Premier League soccer, we covered Champions League, and then we did grassroots soccer. We covered the London Underground League over in England, London, duh. And so that was a lot of cool interviewing managers and watching the Premier League every single week. But I feel like there's enough of those podcasts out there. And so I was getting worn out. And one thing that I was told by a friend, he's like, if this starts feeling like a job, then why do it anymore? And I was like, that's smart. I was like, he could tell that it was taking a toll on me and everything. And my heart really wasn't in it anymore. Just trying to watch every single Premier League game, do notes and everything. And I was like, yeah, I don't know if this is for me. And so my old co-host, Tyler Elliott, he got a new job or something like that. So he wasn't available to record with me weekly. And I really didn't want to do a solo podcast. And look at me now, right? That's basically what the podcast is me just giving game recaps, usually by myself, and then I try to do match previews with an MLS commentator or journalist in the MLS world. And so I would go through rotating host when I was doing the full-time podcast, and I was like, you know what, I just can't do this anymore. This isn't for me. And so I stopped podcasting, I think, until the end of November, maybe something like that. And I was like, I did go to a Philadelphia Union game. This is in 2019, mind you. And I was like, I had a lot of fun going to that. And I planned on going to a lot of games in 2020. And I was like, why not do a Philadelphia Union podcast? There weren't a ton at the time.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I ventured off into that. I kept the name The Free Kick. Me and my friend Tyler, we decided to change it from the full-time podcast to The Free Kick, because there was a lot of other podcasts with the name The Full-Time Podcast.
Hmm.
And we're like, yeah, this kind of sounds cheesy. And now when you type in The Free Kick, there's a whole bunch of The Free Kick podcast. I'm like, oh man, I'm not changing my name though. So I put too much work into the logo,
Hmm.
and I feel like everybody knows me now as The Free Kick. So might have to copyright that though, right?
Right, right. Yeah. No, it was kind of the same thing when I was we were thinking about our name. We were like, probably put something in with dupe, but then when you look at it, it's like dupe by the river, and then you have like all like the dupe, like a lot of people
Brothers.
incorporate, yeah, Doopy Brothers and all that. So we were like, how can we just make it about the union, but like kind of just come up with something that is for is like meaningful for us. So no, that's interesting, because you're right, there's a lot of full-time now like names and everything, because I was looking at, I guess it was MLS, has like extra time, and I typed that
For
in,
sure.
and then it was like full-time this and like all these different ones. So
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up extra time though. And I've had a lot of people tell me, well, The Free Kick doesn't tell me you're a Philadelphia Union podcast. Everybody knows extra time. They know it's an MLS podcast. So why can't The Free Kick be known as a Philadelphia Union podcast?
right.
That's why we got to get more listeners, because then people are going to know when they hear The Free Kick, oh, that's a Philadelphia Union podcast. That's how
Right.
extra time came about, right? I mean, that's
Right.
just such a generic soccer term, extra time. But when you say that, you think MLS. So
Right. Right.
why can't it be the same for The Free Kick, Philadelphia Union? So I think eventually we'll get that way. And that's why I liked how you said in the intro, Maryland's #1 Philadelphia Union podcast. I try not to take myself too seriously. And so just having a laugh and everything, saying Maryland's #1, because it is
Hmm.
Maryland's only Philadelphia Union podcast. So of course it's going to be the #1.
Right, right.
That's all good.
I just love that too, because like on your sticker, it's like Maryland's #1. I'm like, that's awesome. I love that. So I'm gonna flip. I know, like you said, spoiler alert, we had some questions. I want to flip this. I'm gonna flip this my next question. So how has the union changed your how has the union changed your life, for you and for like, I know your sister sometimes goes to your games, and your family, I'm sure, has been to a couple games. How's the union changed your life?
So my family has never been to a Union game.
Oh, really?
We've tried to convince them to come all the time, and no interest. They're watching on TV. Mostly
Okay.
my dad who'll watch it on TV. Like we'll put it on the TV for my mom, and she'll watch it, I think, to look for us. Or I guess now my sister, since I don't sit in my season ticket
Mhm.
seat anymore. And so I think that's the only reason she watches, to see how many times they show my sister, because that's why my sister and I love the seats that we sit in the river end, is because we're 3 rows off of the field, and the camera would always pan to us. And so I'd get text from my dad or mom, oh, I see you on TV, I see you on TV, I see you on TV. And so yeah, we like where we're sitting, but I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit later. I do not sit there anymore. Still have the tickets. My sister
Mhm.
sits there. But how has the union changed my life? Well, I think the easy thing is, meeting people like you
Mhm.
guys, building relationships with people, whether it be fans, media members, um, with the team itself. So I mean that's changed my life completely. Where look, let's face it, neither one of us knew who each other were until I don't even know how we got introduced, Kyle. I don't know how you found us, and then you introduced me to Jillian. But because of this podcast, I got introduced to all these wonderful fans, and
Mhm. Mhm.
just the side of media. And then I've traveled to places where I've never been before, going to Atlanta, going to Cincinnati last season. And my sister and I already have our trip booked for Colorado in May. Never been that far west, so really looking forward to that. Um, and again, I mean, I never thought I would go to Atlanta, and never thought I'd go to Cincinnati. The only time I'd been in Atlanta is for a layover flying, and I don't count that. And so to be able to get out in the city and explore it and everything, I mean, I tell fans all the time, I think Atlanta should be on people's bucket list at the top. It's a wonderful city, so much to do, so much to see. It's a beautiful stadium. I know they play in a football stadium, but you can tell that they built that stadium with soccer in mind. That's why we
Right.
see the World Cup going there in 2026.
Right.
Cincinnati Stadium, I think, I've not been to many MLS stadiums yet, but I think Cincinnati's is the best stadium in MLS. Jim Curtin said the same thing, that they have the nicest stadium in MLS. It's a beautiful stadium, and again, I encourage people to go out there if they've never been out to Cincinnati. And like you mentioned, my sister, she goes to all the games with me. We share season tickets, and it's another thing that we both get to enjoy. And so she likes soccer because I played in high school, so she started paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
And then she started going to games with me because I said, "Hey, look, let's see. I know you like soccer. Let's see how you like this." And we didn't even sit in the river end the first time. We sat in like 131, 130 on one of the sides of the stadium. And I think she enjoyed that, but I was like, you know what? Let me get you on the river and see how you really like that. And yeah, she was hooked from like the first minute. And yeah, I mean, just bringing us closer together. Like, we've always been close, but it's another thing that we enjoy doing together. And like I mentioned earlier, you know, just traveling to places that I've never been before. She comes along with me.
Right. And that's exactly kind of the same thing with the union, like we've said on our show before. It's something that we get to do. It's the one team we both get to enjoy. And who would have thought that this year we just on a whim of the moment sitting there at the river end while we're all celebrating. She turns to me and she looks. She's behind me and she turns to me and she goes, "Do you want to go to LA?" And I go, "Well, yeah. I mean, we can go." And I'm thinking, what she's like,
I'm
we
like
go
booking it.
booking it. Are you sure? I'm like, yeah, let's go. And like somebody like old guys like next to me going, yeah. I'm like, all right, you're going. It was like, all right, but so you're like, how did we get connected? Well, so I'll tell you that story. So I had been listening, I think, to the Doopy brothers. I had been connecting, listening to their show, and I started getting in. This is probably like right during, I think, right around the 2021 season. And I've been listening to podcasts, and I saw yours pop up. I think it maybe was Billy or somebody had retweeted one of your episodes, or maybe it was Jeff. Anyway, I started listening, and it was the Atlanta game, not this year's, but last year's. And I don't know if you remember that, but a lot of people were down on us after that, like 1-0 win against Atlanta at home. And you had this episode, and I'm thinking, well, we played pretty good against Atlanta. And you had this episode, and everything you were saying was something I was seeing. So then I started listening, and I was listening more and more, and we had guests on, and you always were like, "Hey, if anybody has questions, please reach out to me. I'd love to have questions answered." So finally, one day I'm sitting there on the and I'm just like, you know what? I'm gonna answer a question. And now we talk regularly, and it's funny how that works, because it's like, we've talked so much, and it was like, just, and that's why I say to people, sometimes you just gotta reach out to somebody, like, on these podcasts, because yeah, that's kind of how we got connected. And then I think the other one, when first time we met, was after the Glesnes goal, when you were like, "Hey, where are you sitting? Where are you sitting?" And then me and my other buddy Todd, we walked over and introduced ourselves. So yeah.
That's right, because that was the game I was not at. I was coaching on the pool deck. I lament not being there still, but
So, but anyway, so I guess when we look into this past season, how did this 2022 season, what did that mean to you, being a fan of the Union?
Oh man. I don't think we could ask for a better season other than winning
Right.
MLS Cup, right? And I've asked guests this, and I'm sure I'll continue to ask guests this in the next couple of weeks that come onto the podcast. Do they think the 2022 season was successful? And everybody tells me yes, and I 100% agree with that. And you just look, and people that listen to my podcast, I've talked about all these stats that we broke this season. And when you look at that, and look, some people might not know, maybe they're hearing from me for the first time. I did not come into the Philadelphia Union from day one. I became a fan in 2017. And so I always talk about when this team first started, the OGs, the day ones, like those guys would kill for the season we just had after failure after failure after failure in the early days. And yeah, it sucks not winning a trophy. But look, here's the thing, right? Only one team all season gets to win the ultimate prize, MLS Cup. Everybody else, they're losers, right? They can only be one winner.
Right.
But yeah, we lost MLS Cup, but you look at the success we had in the season where I remember writing articles talking about, wow, the Union are about to break the most wins they've ever had in a single season on the road, which ended up being 7. And I was like, this is unheard of, because if you want to be successful in MLS, we know you have to take care of business at home. If you don't take care of business at home, you're not making it in the playoffs at all. But if you take care of business at home, you also have to get results on the road. And we saw the Union do that this season.
Right.
And so once I saw the Union were getting wins on the road, they were still drawing like they'd done in the past. I'm like, okay, well, if it ends up that we have to go on the road in MLS Cup, I have full confidence in this team, because we saw it in LA earlier in the season where they tied that game. And the same thing happened. They came back twice in LA and MLS Cup. And so this team, they fight so hard on the field at home. We all know that, but it's the same on the road too. Yeah, we know that they had a disappointment in Cincinnati and Charlotte, and those games sucked and everything, and fans want to forget about those games. But from most of the season, they were pretty dang good, right? And so I think as fans, that's all you can ask for. If you see attractive soccer, and the team's successful with wins, I think we're all going to be happy and keep showing up, and winning helps. And you saw that from last year in Nashville and New York Red Bulls. That stadium was packed in the playoffs. And then we have the New York City game where half the team is out because of COVID. And you know what? Fans still showed up. And I talk about this moment, not a lot, but I brought it up multiple times, where the thing that stands out to me the most about that game against New York City in 2021 is how loud that stadium was during warmups, because those fans knew, you know what, these players are playing maybe their first time ever this season. They haven't played a lot this season. Let's get behind them early. Let them know, hey, look, we believe in you. And we saw it. The Union went ahead in that game 1-0 against New York City. And a lot of that had to do because of the fans getting behind this team. And the fans are going to show up. If the team wins, if they're successful, that place is going to be rocking, and we saw it all last season.
Absolutely.
And I still think to this day that pregame when they're warming up was the loudest. I mean, they ain't even gone on the field. You remember, they ain't gone on the field yet, and we're all in the Riverhand chanting. It was like, wow, we're like,
So
wow,
hype.
that was wild. And to this day, I think maybe the Eastern Conference Finals this year, when we went down 1-0, it got loud real quick.
Yeah, like
That was,
we didn't get silent, we got loud.
yeah, because I'm
was
like,
great.
oh man, here we go. And then literally everybody just started chanting. We're like, all right, let's go. And then you saw how they responded. So
yeah, sitting in the press box during that playoff game, you know, once New York City scored, like for 10 seconds, like all you heard was New York City fans, but then you guys got so loud in the river and you drowned them out. Like you guys got behind the team. And I'm like, that's what you love to see. That, okay, look, the Union barely went behind at home this season. And okay, it happens in the playoffs, but you guys push them on to get the equalizer. I think it was like 5 minutes after New York City scored, and you're like, okay, here we go, off of a set piece. And I love talking about Frank Leis's set piece and a great ball in by Jacob Glissons to Julian Carranza. And it's like, okay, the players have the belief they just tied up this game, and now is it going to be a rout? because we saw
Right.
a lot during the season. Once the Union got that first goal, the second, the third, the fourth are coming. And yeah,
Yeah.
that was so enjoyable this season, just seeing them blow teams out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, follow-up question on that game, and I don't think I've ever asked you this. What was your favorite of the 2 goals? I mean, Corey's was special, just that whole celebration there to us, because he had been fighting. That was a beautiful goal. But out of Daniel's and Julian's, which is your favorite? Because I love that ball that comes in, Julian perfect header, and you just see Dan just run on that ball, and we go up in that place. Everybody's going nuts already because they know it's coming. Which was your favorite of those 2?
Yeah, I think that's why we get along so well, Kyle, because we see a lot of the same things. We agree on a lot of the same
Yeah.
things. And yeah, I think that Gaza goal, I mean, a beautiful header from Julian
Yeah.
Kranza, right? To hit that down. Like, he couldn't have placed that any better. He had to get the weight perfect on that pass. And Sean Johnson knew Daniel Gazdag wasn't missing that. Like, you could tell, like, as soon as Sean Johnson saw the ball fall to Daniel Gazdag, well, we're going down 2-1, nothing we can do. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, are the Union just going to keep coming at us? Are they going to pour in multiple goals? Because that's what they've done throughout the season. So, yeah, I would say that Gazdag goal, but man, I love set pieces, and
Me too.
seeing that quick restart from Jacob Glesnes to Julian Kranza, just those 2 being on the same page. Oh man, that was a special goal. But yeah, I got to go with the Gazdag goal.
All right, Jillian, do you want to ask the next question?
So yeah, how have you noticed the fans and general attention to the Union and MLS change since following the team?
Well, we talked about it earlier, right? Winning. Once teams win, that stadium gets packed. So the first time I went to a game was in 2019, a home opener against Toronto, and it just snowed the day before. And I I was not looking forward to going to the game. I'm not gonna lie. And I remember seeing on social media, like, the teams clearing off the field of snow and everything. The team posted a video of Marco Fabian jumping into the snow and everything. I was like, oh man, this is the kind of game it's gonna be. It's gonna be so freezing. These guys are having fun in the snow. I was like, you know what? Whatever, I'll suck it up. And I remember my buddy and I, Tyler Elliott, we went to that game and I forgot a beanie. I was like, oh, great. We're off to a great start. And I wanted to get a long sleeve jersey, and I should have wore that jersey that I brought that day. But for the people that are watching on YouTube, I'm wearing a Ernst Tanner
Oh,
Oh,
a
nice.
warm-up jersey. So I know you guys always do. What are you wearing today, Jillian? What are you wearing today,
we
Kyle?
forgot to
And
do
Yes.
that.
you
We
forgot
Yes,
to
I
do that.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah, we hopped right into it. So, but anyway, keep going.
All right, cool. So yeah, I just remember, like, that place was packed for the home opener in 2019, despite how cold it was. And so I remember watching on TV in 2017. I didn't watch all games because living in Maryland, I couldn't get every single Philadelphia Union game. But when they would play DC United, of course, I would get that game on TV down here. And then if they decided to put the Union on national TV, which wasn't often in 2017, I would watch the Union then. And I can just remember, there would be times where that stadium was not packed. The Union weren't playing pretty in 2017. And fans weren't going to the stadium. But once you invest into the team, I think it helps where the academy has been really successful, seeing Brendan Aronson now thrive for Leeds United. When you hear about these young players coming through the academy, people get excited. And I remember when Paxton Aronson hadn't made his first team debut, but I remember Rusty Aronson, Paxton and Brendan's dad, saying, at this age, Paxton Aronson's miles ahead of Brendan Aronson.
Wow.
And fans were super excited to hear that. And then you had Ernst Tanner echo the same statement. And then you had Jim Curtin echo the same statement. And that's like the first time I ever heard people like go all in on the academy when people were like, we know how good Brendan Aronson is, but everybody keeps saying he has this younger brother, Paxton Aronson. And so I remember going to the stadium when he made his debut. So many people had 30 Aronson on it. I was like, wow, like, people really believed into this hype, and he's a great player. And we saw him just move this offseason to Frankfurt and Germany, and I think he's going to follow in a similar footstep to Brendan Aronson. But yeah, just from 2017, when the team's not that successful, to what it is now, winning helps when you invest into players and everything. When you get a sporting director that actually cares about the team, Jim Curtin's been with this team since 2014, and he gives credit to ownership a lot for sticking with him. And I do too. We see it all the time in sports where, okay, a season or two, if they're not winning games, you're not making it to playoffs. Ownerships bringing in a new coach, or you see it all the time in European soccer. After a couple games, they're getting fired. It's like
Right,
we know they
right.
deal with promotion relegation, and those owners, they're terrified of that. So they're firing managers a lot faster than they get fired in MLS. But ownership stuck with Jim Curtin, and Jim Curtin, Ernst Tanner, they hit it off well. And I think those two have brought so much success for this team, and the winning helps. And so I think that's just the difference right there. This team's winning a lot more games than they were in 2017.
And have you noticed it down in Maryland? Like I know for like us, we'll be like out in the town and we'll see somebody with like a Union shirt on or something. We
Well,
didn't
yeah, like
see
as a
that.
teacher, I see students sometimes, in Southern Lancaster County, wearing Union stuff. I have some diehard like fans at school, which is great. I see more and more of that. So
Even in York, like I
yeah.
told you a couple times, I've seen members walk in and be like, "Hey, they know I follow the Union." They're like, "Hey, we watched that game. Hey, sorry, I think after when I got back from LA, I had so many. Oh man, I watched that game. It was so awesome. Like, I'm so sorry." I'm like, "Dude, that was a great game." But we
Yeah.
see so many people now wearing Union stuff, and it's like, wow, York County. Okay, so have you seen that down in Maryland?
My sister's seen it a lot more than me. I mean, anytime she's out in public and she sees somebody with a Union license plate or a Union
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
sticker, or they're wearing Union gear, she's calling me out right away. Like, I just saw a Union fan. I just saw a Union fan. I'm like, you love to see it. So yeah, I mean, I have been out and I've seen people have like Union decals on their cars and everything. I mean, not as often as you guys seem to text me, but yeah, it's growing here. And it's so crazy to me, right? I tell people all the time when they say, "Oh, I'm from Maryland and I support Philadelphia Union." It's a lot closer. That's why I became a
Yeah.
Philadelphia Union fan.
Yeah.
It's a lot closer to go up to Chester than it is to go down
Mhm.
to DC. Mileage wise, closer DC is, but that DC traffic is horrendous. And that
Yeah.
is why I was not going to become a fan of DC United and travel down there every single week or every other week to go see that team, where I'm like, I can't do it with this traffic, but takes an hour to get up to Chester. It's perfect for me. Just hop on 95 and I'm there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I say it all the time. It's like, man, like these people, I live in Harford County, Maryland, which I know probably doesn't mean a lot to you guys that are listening to this podcast. So
Mm-hmm.
that's about 20 minutes north of Baltimore City.
Mm-hmm.
And so I say it all the time. It's like, it's not far. Like, I know soccer is huge here in Maryland. Like, these people should not be DC United fans. They should be a Philadelphia Union fans
Right.
because one, the team's a lot better than DC United. Two, it's a lot
Mhm.
easier to get to Chester. And
Right.
so I think again, we're talking about winning. Slowly but surely, fans are coming out in Maryland. People that I don't even know. I just see them in random places in public. And I have been in touch with some people living in Maryland that have said, "Hey, look, I live in Maryland too. I'm a Philadelphia Union fan." I'm like, great, this is awesome. So I think slowly but surely it's gonna keep creeping down here into Maryland.
Yeah, I think in general, the Union are just getting a lot more notice. It's always been, oh, people are 4-4-4 Philly, and it's like I'm seeing more and more 5-for-5, and
Mm-hmm.
which is great. Even like, well, back to what we're wearing, I'm wearing 5-for-5 Philadelphia shirt, came up as a sponsored post on Facebook, and naturally I was like, oh, it has Andre Blake on it,
Yeah.
has all, it's got, all of them. It's got Blake, it's got Carter Hart, it's got Jalen Hurts, it's got Bryce Harper and Joel Embiid, and I thought that was perfect to sum up, the end of 2022 because, well, aside from the Flyers, all the Philly sports were, doing well. The Flyers had like a moment when everyone else was doing good, but yeah. Um, so, yeah, it's becoming more of a thing, which is good, got to keep it growing, keep that fan base growing.
Absolutely. And then so now that you're kind of in like more with like in the press box, you go sometime you've been on the interviews with Jim Ernst. How have you noticed in the media and like their attitudes have shifted? Like and even for like me from the outside, like I'm starting to see the MLS talking more and more about the union, where remember there's always been that joke of, oh, the MLS, they never talk about the union. Well, heck, at the end of the year, you saw a whole bunch of them starting to be like, hey, the union are actually doing something here. They got a shot, So being in the media, how do you see the attitude shifting?
Yeah, exactly what you said. I mean, Tannenwald, Tansey, and DeGeorge, I give those guys credit
Right.
I mean, win, lose, or draw, those guys were always covering the team. And those guys, what else can I say about them? I mean, they're excellent journalists. They've been with the team for so long, and they're doing a good job giving the Union the coverage that they deserve. And then, of course, you've got people like Matt Ralph, Greg Oldfield, who write for the Brotherly Game. And, that's not their full-time job, but they're doing just as much work as the guys that are getting paid covering this team. And then, I see other people that work for smaller platforms too, still covering this team. So you're starting to see a lot more smaller news sites take notice of the Union. At least I have. And I think that's only going to continue to grow. I remember listening to one of Kevin Kincaid's podcasts where he said, a few years ago, that press box is jam packed. And now when I get into the press box, they're socially distancing us where it's every other seat you're sitting next to. But I feel like they're only doing that to make it look like it's a lot more crowded in the press box than what it really is. I mean, there's the three I mentioned, Tansy, DeGeorge, and Tannenwald, who are always there. Greg Oldfield and Matt Ralph. It's one of those guys, maybe sometimes both. Skylar Hoffner, who writes for Philly Union Nation, I believe it is. Obviously myself. And that's pretty much it, who shows up on a weekly basis in the press box. Occasionally you get somebody from the other team there. I know a couple guys that cover the Union in Spanish, but they're not there every single week. And it's very, very, very rare when you get somebody from MLS soccer at the game, unless it's a playoff game. Of course, everybody comes for playoffs. But like you said, Kyle, you read MLS articles, there seems to be a lot more Union articles than there were a few seasons ago. And again, back to our conversation, winning helps. The Union win, people want to be like the Union. And so people are like, oh, this is easy. I have something to write about because this team's doing something that no other team in MLS is doing. And so because of that, you're starting to see it also change in the national media.
Right. No, that's good. And follow up to that. So Eastern Conference Finals, how packed was that?
Oh man.
How packed was it?
It was, oh man, it
Was
like,
there some big names in there?
Who was in there? Tom Bogert was in there. Dave Gass was at the stadium, apparently. I never saw him in the press box. Oh, the Cooligans, you guys might know them. They were in the press box. Alexi and Christian.
Yeah.
And they were in the press box. Let's see. I saw, what is his name? Sam Jones, I think his name is. He writes for The Striker, which covers Atlanta United. He's the correspondent for Atlanta United. He was there, I believe, during the playoffs. Maybe it was just Atlanta. What's his last name? Huge soccer writer, one of the OGs. I forget his last name. It'll come to me at the end of this podcast. But yeah, I mean, there were some huge names in the press box. Pablo Maurer from The Athletic, he was also in the press box. So yeah, I mean, playoff time, you do get all the big names coming out.
So a couple just questions here from a couple conversations we had. I want to kind of get a follow up is in this last episode we had here in 2022, I talked about potential breakout players. Now, as I said, we don't know what the roster is. The transfer window is just open. So we're looking at, and I put out a poll, what's the potential breakout player for the Union 2023? And I said on our last show that, you had said Leon Flock. So kind of go into that, because I definitely agree with you just from what we've talked about this, what he does. He's the, unsung hero of the Union a lot of times. What have you seen to kind of make you have that opinion?
Yeah, I mean, obviously everybody's saying Mikael Uhre, which, that's too easy to say. So I could have said that too. But I decided to go with Leon Flock because I looked at his numbers from 2021 to 2022. His passing went up. His passing accuracy went up. And I know you can't base everything off of stats. It's about what you see with the eye test. But there was a couple times during the season where Leon Flock made really, really good runs where he drug out a player. And now Daniel Gazak has his space to float into. Julian Kranza has his space to
Mhm.
attack. Now it leaves Kai Wagner 1v1 against the fullback, where it makes it easier for Kai to get a cross into. And things like that don't show up in the stat sheet. And we all know Leon Flock's pressing's the best on this team, and the stats back that
Mhm.
up. But I think, it's just the little things that he does off the ball. And the big knock on him is his passing sucks. And his passing improved. I could tell you that
Mhm.
without even looking at the stats. Like, yeah, this guy's finding the right passes. He's getting the ball off quicker. And I think that's only going to continue next season. Yeah, I see fans get on Leon Flock all the time about not scoring or, oh, he doesn't assist enough. That's not his job.
Right.
Mhm.
His job is to press the hell out of the ball, to give Kai Wagner coverage when Kai pushes up on that left side of the field. And he's doing all that exceptionally well. And it's kind of
Right.
criminal, in my opinion, that Liam Flock hasn't been called up to one of these U.S. camps, because he's playing phenomenal defensively for the Union. And I think he would be a terrific backup for Tyler Adams
Oh,
with the
absolutely.
national team. And so maybe Leon Fleck does get caught up in this January camp that's coming up. I hope he does. This January camp typically is mostly MLS players.
Mhm.
So maybe Leon Fleck is one of those players finally getting called into the national team, which, don't forget, he's eligible to play for Germany as well, which, if I'm Leon Fleck and Germany's calling me, yeah, even though I was born in the US, whichever national team gives me my debut first, I'm taking that.
Mhm.
And
Right.
so hopefully the US do take advantage of that. And I don't think Liam Flock's going to last much longer in MLS because he's young. There's nothing he needs to improve on defensively. But if he can have another successful year where his passing gets better, he adds a couple more assists. Like I said, he's making the right runs. He made the right runs off the ball this season, opening up
Mhm.
space. There's times where he made the right pass, but Mikael Uhr or Julian Kranzer were late coming to the ball. So
Right.
if he keeps improving on that, yeah, I don't see why Leon Flock won't be the breakout player in 2023.
That's a very, very good point, especially with what you brought up about, like, that's the thing I kind of noticed too. He was making the right passes a lot of the time. He was making those right runs. And like you just said with Kai, he does a great job, especially when Kai sometimes, and we've seen he presses up a little too high sometimes. And then, there's that turnover. Now they're on the, defense. And how many times have we seen it? He stops those guys right down, gets the ball back right there, cross in, boom, Union score. We've seen that this year. And so, yeah. Um, Recently on your pod, you've been talking a lot with Piccadilly and then with Bear Fight, about grassroots soccer. And in your opinion, how can grassroots soccer grow locally? And then a follow-up to that is, how can the growth of grassroots really impact the growth of the union and or MLS, it doesn't matter, in the community? How do you see that, kind of like a symbiotic relationship? You have the local and then you grow it, into the MLS.
For sure. And I got to say, I've had a lot of fun introducing Union fans, maybe for the first time, to Jem Toygar, one of my closest friends. He lives over in England, the manager of Piccadilly FC. I had a lot of fun recording that podcast with him, and it was a shame that he couldn't get on the East Coast this year when he came to the United States. He went to Nashville, his first ever MLS
Mhm.
game. We talked about that on that podcast, and then locally talking about Bear Fight FC. And I think the easiest answer to your question, Kyle, is just show up and watch. But we know that's not that easy as saying it is. I
Right.
think there's a lot of people in grassroots soccer for the right reasons, for growing the game, for developing players, for building community, uniting people. And that's great. That's what
Right.
grassroots soccer should be about, in my opinion. But you do have a lot of people that are in it purely for money. And grassroots soccer can be very profitable. I'm not going to shy away and say, oh, no, you can't make money running your own team. You definitely can. But I think one thing that would help is if organizations would just be straight up and say, yeah, we're just in this for money.
Right.
Yes, we're going to bring in these coaches that could potentially get your kids noticed by professional teams or get you in a good high school and a good college. But we're going to charge you a lot of money because we know we can. But if people would be straight up and say that, then I think we can agree that they probably want to get the support that they get. They push it to where, okay, we bring in the best coaches, and we're going to get your kids playing on their high school team. We're going to get your kids noticed by colleges so they can go to school on a scholarship. But realistically, are all teams like that? No, they're not. They're in it to make money. And so I think people should be honest, but they're not going to be honest. Not all people
Right.
are going to be honest. And I also think marketing goes a long way to getting the word out about your team, etc. And the way that grassroots soccer can help the union MLS, well, it's just more opportunities for people to play soccer. Maybe they can't afford to play for those expensive club teams and go to these tournaments where the scouts are. But these grassroots teams still give players an opportunity to play the game. And I think that's what it's all about. Just kids having fun, opportunity to play a sport that continues to grow in America. And I'll give you an example right here, right? A small rec soccer team in Falston, which is about 10, 15 minutes away where I live.
Right.
One of their kids got signed to the Union's Academy.
Oh.
And this isn't an expensive rec program. This isn't an expensive club team. It's a rec program. And somehow the kid got found out by somebody that obviously scouts for the Union's Academy, and they signed him to the academy. And you never know who's watching. People are always recording, especially in today's day and age.
Yep.
Everything always gets posted on social media. I feel like they're just always anything you can find on the internet, I feel like. And again, you just never know whose eyes will see that video. And I know saying that puts a lot of pressure on kids at a young age.
Right.
And it's pressure that they don't need. And I've been to so many youth soccer games where I'm sure you guys have seen this with swimming, where parents are just belittling their kids. Oh, you did this wrong. You didn't do this. You're not going to get looked at if you don't keep this up. And it's like, why are you putting this pressure on these kids where they just want to do this sport just to have fun? So many parents today want their kids to go professional. You got to get this full ride scholarship. You got to do the sport. Oh, what? Like, why can't we just let kids enjoy playing the sport that they're doing? Why can't we let kids pick what they want to do? Why are we forcing these kids to do something because you see, oh, this is the best way to get my kid a scholarship. Oh, this is the best way to get my kid to play professionally. Like, let them do what they want to do.
Right.
Stop putting these pressure on these kids at these swim meets, at these sporting events. Like,
right.
Stop being a sideline coach. And I feel bad for these kids because myself growing up, I would see parents get in with the head coach, but I feel like it's 10 times worse now. And I do feel bad for kids. But again, you do get these grassroots teams giving kids an opportunity to play a sport. So I think, that does ultimately help MLS. Like I gave that example for this kid that was playing rec soccer in Falston, got signed by the Union. The Union didn't have this kid on the radar. They ultimately, I guess, saw a video of this kid playing good and they signed him to their academy. Nice. And if we're talking about the atmosphere for non-league and amateur grassroots teams, I would expect the support to be minimum, unless, obviously it's like youth and everything. Like, of course, you're going to have parents there and coaching again on the sidelines. I hate it. But, when you talk about non-league amateur grassroots teams, you're going to have the minimum support, but expect those guys to be true supporters of the game, showing up to watch local soccer.
Oh no, that hits a point. And to your point, we see it all the time in coaching. And
I mean, I've had to have a conversation with a parent, like, your kid clearly does not enjoy this. Like, they hid in the locker room for practice for like a week and tried to, and I said to their parents, I'm like, where's your kid been? And they're like, oh, they've been. I'm like, they have not been, and just like, like forcing kids to, do that, Yeah, I mean, we want them to enjoy it. We want them to enjoy what they do. And I think that's why I stayed as a competitive swimmer as long as I did. Like my
Right.
dad was a swim coach and he never forced me to do it. I wanted to do it. I think with all sports, that's just huge. Have the enjoyment be there first and foremost. Have the kid want to do it.
My whole thing has always been the analogy I've heard from day one. Sports are games. Games are supposed to be fun. And if they're not fun, why are we doing them? I get when you get to the professional level, it's a different game. I mean, it's a different when I was at the national level as an athlete. It's a different mindset. But at the youth level, let's have fun. You know what I'm saying? So you have a busy January coming up. So let's talk a little bit. We got a couple more questions, but let's discuss the U.S. Coaches Clinic in Philadelphia. So talk to people about that and what's going on. Do you have anything planned that you can share?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I mean, it's going to be a busy January, and I just want to get it out there real quick. I know I talk a lot, right? And so for people like, oh man, this guy never shuts up. Like I always feel bad when I have episodes that go long. So I just want to say I'm sorry if I'm talking for too long. Like,
No, you're
I
fine.
guess that's why I do a podcast, right? Because I enjoy talking. But to answer your question, the United States Soccer Coaches Convention is coming to Philadelphia this year. And let me get this out of the way real quick for people that are interested in attending the conference. And if you want to use my promo code TFK23, that gets you, I forget how much off. I think the price goes out to be $375. So it's a lot cheaper than I think it's at $500 right now for the convention. So if people are interested in going to the conference, use TFK23, get you some money off the conference. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. People from all over the world are coming to this convention just to continue to learn about the game. And I think that's why I'm so excited that I was invited to this conference to bring my podcast there because, yeah, I may know a lot about soccer, but do I know everything? No. I always want to grow my knowledge of the game, just like I want to do with everyday life. I feel like life would be so boring if we knew everything. So just to expand my knowledge of soccer, to learn the latest coaching trends and everything, I'm really looking forward to listening to some of these speakers that are coming out. For Union fans, Ernst Tanner is going to be there, Phil Wetton, Jim Curtin, JP Dellacamera. And so my plan, I'm really, 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 really hoping that this happens. I've never had Jim Curtin on the podcast. I've had chances where I could have had him on the podcast, but I'm like, so many other Union podcasts I've had Jim Curtin on, or I'm in his press conferences every single week. It's like, I don't really need Jim Curtin on my podcast, but I don't know. I mean, he's going to be at this convention. Why not try to get him on the podcast to do it in person? I want to try to get Ernst Tanner. Phil Wetton, I'm sure, would definitely come on. He's been on the podcast before. I would love to have JP Dellacamera, the Union's old TV analysis, I guess we can call play-by-play. And I do say old because we all know the Apple and MLS deal, no more local commentators. So hopefully JP is a part of that Apple MLS deal, which is shocking to me that we have heard nothing on that still.
Right.
Who's going to be the commentary teams. And so Union fans, you want to see these guys speaking at the convention? Hey, come on out to see some Union guys. There's going to be a ton of Union tithes to this convention. And for myself, I'm a Manchester United fan, and I don't have a Manchester United flag up in my background. It's on the other wall. But I'm a huge Manchester United fan. Mike Phelan, who's the ex-assistant manager to Sir Alex Ferguson and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, he's going to be at the convention. So maybe I get him on the podcast. So all those guys I just mentioned, I want to try to get them on the podcast, interview them. And I put up a poll. I left it up there for, I think, 4 days where do people want 15, 20-minute episodes, multiple episodes a day? Do they want 1 hour-long plus episode a day? Do they want the content spread out over the next couple of weeks? So, yeah, take the time out, vote what you guys want at Free Kick Pod on Twitter.
Yep.
That tweet is pinned at my page. And so, yeah, just like listening to these coaches speak, trying to get these guys to come onto my podcast. And we talked about earlier how I used to cover the Premier League. One of my friends from what I used to talk about Premier League, his podcast got invited to the convention. So I'm probably going to have him come on to the podcast.
Awesome.
should I break news now? Yeah, I will break news on your show. Billy Myers, you guys know him, is coming on as a co-host for me at the convention. I did not mention his name on my podcast. I'm not doing on any more episodes until the convention. So
Right.
the only way people are going to find out about that information, they got to listen to your guys' podcast. So hopefully they are.
Awesome.
But Billy
Awesome.
knows so much about the union,
Right.
and looking forward to him and I just having conversations about the union, interviewing some of these people. And so, as long as his wife doesn't have the baby during the convention, Billy will be there. So,
That'd be
really looking forward
awesome.
to just meeting all these different coaches, all these people that do podcasts. Maybe they're just fans of the game. I'm really looking forward to all that from January 11th through January 15th.
Awesome. Awesome. And I know you and Billy are gonna knock it out of the park. He has his own little podcast show with Lucky Baby and his wife. And then, so I think you guys are gonna knock it out of the park. And personally, I voted for if you want to know, I voted for one episode a day because I wanted to see you spread out, but I think I've told you that already. But honestly, I think it's going to be an awesome opportunity. And we're really happy for you. And I'm looking forward to hearing some of these stories coming up once this podcast is that convention's over.
For sure.
I'm definitely looking forward to it.
So I guess kind of piggybacking off of what we talked about, I'm going to skip ahead here. And this is one I didn't put on. What makes the fan base special? And I'm not just talking about the Sons of Ben and supporters. I'm talking about this fan base compared to other MLS fan bases that you've seen.
That's a good question. And I told you, I sent you a text this morning. I was like, yeah, don't tell me all the questions. Like,
Yeah,
I want to come up with something like on the spot where, okay, I don't just read word for word on a word sheet. What makes the union, I would say the fans don't give up. There is so many times, and I've talked about this so many times on the podcast, where the New York Red Bull game in 2019 in the playoffs, the only reason the Union won that game is because of the fans. The Union are chanting at halftime, "Hey, Union, wake the F up. Hey, Union, wake the F up." And like, oh, dang, these guys haven't given up on us. It is pouring down rain. And the team comes out in the second half and play phenomenal. It's like, where was this in the first half? Like, you wouldn't have put us through all this stress if you guys would have played with that intensity, that energy you guys had in the second half of the game. But when this team goes behind, the fans are still chanting them on. And maybe that didn't happen in the early days where like, oh, same old Union. I know both of you guys are on Union on Twitter. And there's a saying, oh, that's so Union. Because back in the day, oh, everything that could have went wrong for the Union went wrong. And so people would always say, oh, that's so Union. But you don't really see too much of that anymore. And so I would say I've been to games in Atlanta. I've been there twice where Atlanta drew against the Union both games. The first time I went in 2021, when Corey Burke scored the game-tying goal, fans left that game as soon as he scored that goal. They were pissed. They thought they were going to win that game. We had fans telling us once we left the stadium, "Oh, you got lucky. What a crappy way to play." Blah 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 blah. Just egging us on and everything. And it's like, yeah, you might have that in some people in the Union fan base, and maybe that's only a small minority in Atlanta United's fan base. But it's like the people I've been around, like, okay, the Union fans, like, they don't go up. They don't give up if we've just conceded a goal. But these people, there's still time for Atlanta United to get an equalizer. I know we're in the stoppage time, but Atlanta played good that day. And they could have got a game-winning goal with a couple seconds left. I mean, crazier things have happened in soccer. And so to see the fans walk out of the stadium when there's still time on the clock, I'm like, yeah, I don't think we would have got that in Subaru Park. And so, yeah, I would just say, like, this fan base doesn't give up on the team.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we saw it at LA.
Yeah.
We saw it at LA even after the game. I know we were all disappointed, but even after the game, it wasn't like anybody was disappointed. We were all applauding. And like I told you, we were chanting, and I think that you can see the players are like, oh, they're still here, they're still supportive, even though we're all upset, and they came over and it was just it was an awesome scene. As disappointing and as sad as we were, it was an awesome scene to see. And we saw it several times this year. We saw it at Red Bulls this year. When we were at Red Bulls, I mean, we scored that first goal. That place was like quiet. Like you couldn't even hear, you could hear a pin drop in that place.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've definitely seen a big difference between our fan base and like others. And, you know, even at LA, you know, is like impressive as their supporter section was, and, you know, like all their fan base there, even they got quiet when we went ahead, you know. And unfortunately they got woken up by Gareth Bale. But but like even they got quiet, we didn't get quiet, you know, we got louder, you know, and louder. So you know, I think it's kind of a Philly mentality to, you know, you see that kind of you know, support, you see it for the Eagles, you see it, you know,
Oh, you do?
you see it everywhere, you know. So
For sure.
And here's another thing too. Like, we don't need a superstar. Like, if you just work hard defensively, we're satisfied.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
yeah, it sucks when you don't get a superstar, but that doesn't make it or break it for us. Like, if you play good defensively, you work hard for the team, we're going to get behind you. And it's like you said, Jillian, that's that Philly mentality. You work hard, the fans are going to get behind you.
Absolutely.
Right. And that's really a credit, I think, to also Ernst, to understanding that mentality. And I'm sure Jim's, you know, kind of been like, yo, this is Philly, you know, this is how they respect. But I also think, like you said earlier, about those two now being on the same page about how they want to do it. And also think it's the fan base also understands they understand what Ernst wants. And I think it's just like, it's like that perfect mold, if that makes sense, of like everybody knowing like how they do, because you're right. You work hard, we appreciate it. And I think that's a big thing. Speaking of the cup, you were at Subaru Park for the fan thing. What was the atmosphere like?
Phenomenal. It felt like, you know, the final was there. That's what it felt like. Place was loud. And I'll never forget, you know, that minute of joy once we took the lead, where people are running, because we got to be on the field. Like, they let us sit wherever we want in the stadium. And majority of the people are like, yeah, we're gonna watch this on the field. Like, why wouldn't we? And I just remember like running around crazy with my head cut off, just hugging random people and everything. We're jumping up and down, just going mental. And it's like, oh my gosh, the Union are finally gonna win MLS Cup. Like, they were down twice.
I know.
And they could have lost it in the second half when they score a late goal. And here's Jack Elliott scoring a goal, like another goal on set pieces. That's why I love set pieces. So maybe I should have said the set piece goal that Julian Kranza scored, but that's all credit to Frank Leist for the job that he does with this team on set pieces. And it's like, wow, like this team did not give up. And it's going back to what we talked about. You guys in that stadium made so much noise, I am sure, where, okay, when LAFC scores, you guys are getting behind the players and saying, come on, we know you can do it. And sure enough, they tie the game up. And then they get the game-winning goal, we think. And like, just the enjoyment, the tears, the happy tears to see people.
Oh my gosh.
Face. Like, I was like, this is phenomenal. It was so loud. They're playing the DOOP song over the loudspeakers. I'm like,
they were?
That's why, that's why I felt like the game was played there. I was like,
that's awesome.
This, like, I know we're watching it on TV, but man, all those fans making that noise and everything, the enjoyment on people's faces, and to see people again winning helps. And I know the Union had 3 other watch parties, and people were disappointed where they said, yeah, Subaru Park wasn't going to be an option, and then it became an option. And to see all these people come out to Subaru Park, I was so happy. And then obviously we lose in penalties, and I still can't watch that game. I'm never going to watch that game. But I remember just sitting at the halfway circle, just sitting there with on my knees, like, we thought we were gonna win.
We did.
We were a minute away from winning. And freaking Gareth Bale. And then we were terrible on penalties. Once Daniel Gazak slipped, I was like, I know exactly how this is gonna go. Like,
that's exactly how I was too.
Does not miss penalties. And he slips, and I'm like, oh, this is it.
Our guy that we thought was, you know, the sure one there. But
I'm just like,
I know that one glorious minute though. Oh, Yeah, we were
phenomenal.
random. We were hugging random people. Like it was just the biggest amount of joy
You
ever
were
there.
hugging random people. I'm just like,
Kyle actually, I
you
was.
see that? I'm
Kyle was
like,
just standing there in shock. But yeah, I mean, I heard so many, comments about how incredible it was there at the Zoom. So like, I'm so glad that they opened that up to everybody and that, everyone got to experience that.
heck,
That
I'm
went.
getting a little emotional right now thinking about it. I mean, that was such an emotional moment.
It
I
was.
think
Yeah.
the best picture, and I don't know if you've seen it, is Jeffrey, and he's like sitting there like crying and hugging like all
Oh
these
yeah.
people. Yeah, dude, that's like the most iconic picture ever, because like we were talking about the OGs. Like to see some of those OG pictures of those guys just breaking down in tears. I mean, if I'm out there in shock, I can't imagine what they were feeling. And that's
Yeah, me too.
and we were and I'm sitting there when that ball went in, I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, everything that we thought this team could do. That wasn't like, oh my gosh, we're gonna win the cup. It was like everything we thought this team was capable of doing all year is correct. You know what I'm saying? And that was, so when Gareth Bale scores, it's like,
Yeah.
but that was awesome. And would we do it again? Absolutely, in a heartbeat.
For sure.
Yeah, you can't say no on that. It's like, but Jillian has a couple questions here as we wrap it up. Well, you wanted to ask that one.
Well, so, I was wondering, you've interviewed a lot of, interesting people, and I was wondering who's a favorite person that you've interviewed?
Yeah, and when Kyle sent me this, I was so glad that this was a question you were going to ask, because I do honestly think about this often. And a lot of times when I'm driving back from work, or, when I'm at work, I do think about all the people that I've interviewed on my podcast. And it's just so mind-blowing to me. It's so cool to me that people take time out of their day to come onto my podcast to speak with me. Look, I'm a nobody, and like I'm fine with saying that.
Yeah.
And like I try to get MLS commentators on, and for most of the time, they agree to come onto my podcast, and I'm like, this is like mind blowing. And sometimes I got to pinch myself and try not to get starstruck. And I was a little bit starstruck when I got invited into the press conferences with Jim. I'm like, the only way I'm gonna get confidence is by participating. And so, it's got better with myself getting more commentators on, because at the end of the day, we're all people. It doesn't matter what our job title says we are. We're all people. And I've had a lot of great commentators, journalists on the podcast, coaches, Union fans. But I think the person that stands out to me the most is 100% Jordan Angeli. She was the TV analyst for Columbus Crew. And I'm going to be so disappointed if MLS does not include Jordan in the Apple deal. Because in my opinion, she has a bright future in the sport. She used to play. She started a club called the ACL Club, because she tore her ACL multiple times playing soccer. And so what the ACL Club is, it's a community of people that have tore their ACLs, and they get together, and they try to inspire each other through their recovery. Because like she talks about on her podcast, she has a podcast too where she interviews guests, and she posts Instagram videos at, I think, ACL Club. And people say, yeah, we go through the recovery, but a lot of times it's mentally and what's in our heart and everything. Yeah, we know that the doctors are going to get us better and everything, but it's like, it takes such a toll mentally. And so she's doing a wonderful job with the ACL Club. She used to have a podcast with Joe Lowery called MLS Assist. It's a tactical podcast. And she's just one of the smartest minds. Anytime that I would watch a Columbus game, like I would learn something new just by listening to her, because she pays attention to the little details. And like, even if she decided not to be a commentator, like she could be a scout, she could be a coach, she could be whatever in the soccer world, because she pays attention to such little details. And I've had the opportunity twice to have her on the podcast, and I had her on in 2020, I believe it was, and then this season, 2022. And before we recorded, the first thing she said to me was, you're not in the same location you recorded the first time we recorded. And I was like, dang, you remember that I was in my
Wow.
room the first time in 2022, the second time in 2020, and the second time we recorded, we were in my basement.
Oh,
Now
wow.
I'm back up in my room. I moved my desk upstairs. I have a permanent spot in my room, not on a desk. But I was like, here's a girl that I'm sure her world's crazy. She has so much going on for her. And she remembered such a little detail that we recorded in my room first. And then I was in my basement and I was like, I didn't want to record after that. I'm like, wow, you paid attention to such a little detail. And so again,
Right.
I think that goes back to just why she's so good at analyzing games, because she pays attention to those little details. And
Excellent.
again, I hope Apple includes her in the deal because she's just so smart. And yeah, she's meant a lot to me just because she's taught me things that I didn't really pay attention to before. And the preparation that she has not only for Columbus but for whatever team Columbus is about
Right.
to face, like you would think that she's covering that team because she knows so much about that team. And another thing where I just ask people questions and everything. I don't really try to give my thoughts or anything when I bring on these commentators. She's like, well, what do you think about this game? I'm like, wow, you want my opinion. You want to know what I see. And so again, like those little details matter. And
Mm-hmm.
then another thing that's like really, really cool to me is so she's a believer, she's a Christian. And so
Awesome.
not all the time she'll post like scriptures or like what God's done in her life. And I do not talk about politics, religion, or whatever on my podcast. And I know that's like gray areas for people and everything, but
Right.
here's somebody that basically made it, right? It's working in MLS and, politics, religion could potentially get you fired from a job depending on what you say.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And she's not afraid of any of that. And so I think that's encouraging for me as a believer, where here's somebody who,
Right.
has made it in the soccer world and she's still giving all the glory to God. And so I'm like, wow, that's like really, really inspirational. So yeah, I would definitely say Jordan Angeli for sure.
And piggybacking off that, you've had some, good interviews and everything, post game or, whenever. What would be a favorite player interview or most memorable, player you've interviewed?
It's got to be 100% Stuart Finley. And I'm not just saying that because you love Stu, but
Yeah.
it's because like when it was his last game ever with the Union.
Mm-hmm.
And like this guy gave such great answers. He took the time out of his day to not he could have continued to celebrate with his team
Mhm.
after they just
Mm-hmm.
won, but he's taking time out with each media member answering questions. And he went so in depth with some of his answers where I think a lot of that has to do because he played in Europe. So these guys are a lot more media trained than players are here in America.
Right.
But he didn't give me 10-second answers. Like his answers were like a minute long each. And I'm like, wow, he's giving me more than I thought he was going to give me. And so he was just so humble. He was so easy to talk to. And you could tell that, he respected the media members. And so I love Stuart Finley, and it sucks that we saw him go just
Yeah.
because he would give good interviews. Alabador is another great player to interview
Yeah.
just because he's been around for a while. He'll give you a lot of deep answers as well. Um, but yeah, I would say Stuart Finley, number one. I mean, what a great guy he is.
Yeah, I think that's why, even though he wasn't there for, a really large amount of time or, had as much playing time, the fans really, really liked what he did and, really latched on him. I mean, that, his short time there was pretty incredible, honestly. And people still continue to follow him at Oxford. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
And
not surprising.
I think that's I think that's something to me, and I don't know how you feel about this, but what is special to me is we sell a person like a Paxton, like a Brendan, like Stu, and these people, and like now we're like on Oxford. You see it all the time. DOOP on Oxford's like website, and we see that with Leeds and now with Frankfurt. I just think that's really special. I'm sure other teams do. We see Bromby popping in. I know this year when Mikel was on a tear, they were like, "Can you bring him back, please? Bring him
Yeah.
back."
Yeah.
Yeah, but
No, I think if, the fan base gets that, if, player gives it their all, and, just plays, their heart out and everything for that team, the fan base, they respond, so that's why you do have players that have been so, popular with this fan base, even, maybe they haven't been the superstar or whatever.
Right.
100%.
Right. One little final thing. Do you get any good union gifts this year?
This year, okay. Well, I mean, this is one of them. I mean, nobody gifted it. I bought it myself. The Ernst Tenner training top. I bought so much like weird gear. I have, I think,
Yeah.
this is weird to say, a pair of Pat Noonan shorts, a pair of Jose Martinez's shorts, Jack DeVries jacket. It's like really, really cool. I was like, this is like really comfortable. It's one of my favorite things to wear. I think I bought a Nate Harriel warm-up long sleeve winter gear shirt. I was like, this thing's awesome. Trying to think, did I get anything else this year? I mean, besides the new home kit that you're wearing, Kyle.
Yep.
I bought, I think, some of the special jerseys they did. The only union gift I got this season that I can think of the top of my head is the Ocean Parlay kit. My sister bought it for me.
Nice.
So that's the only gift that I got per se, but I mean, I did buy a ton of union gear this season.
Right.
Still looking for that Bethlehem Steel Philadelphia Union kit, that black with the red lettering, but when they pop up on eBay, they're so expensive. So
you saw me post. Did you see me post that the other day?
I did.
Yeah, I'm like, that's the one I'm too. I even asked, I think Billy, I was like, Billy, do you know anybody? He's like, I don't know. It's like they're so rare to find.
So rare.
Oh, it's such a nice jersey. And then you see somebody like walking around the tailgate with one. I'm like, oh,
yeah, I'm not sure if I would wear that in public because, like, how rare that jersey is, and if anything happened to it, like, I'd be devastated. So maybe like on a podcast or something, I would wear one.
Yeah.
But like to a game or something, I don't know.
And sitting in the river end, I just feel weird wearing having red on in the river
that
end.
Too.
Like it just doesn't feel right. Like I feel bad at work when I have a red shirt on.
Okay.
I'm kidding, but it's weird. But anyway, before we wrap up again, thank you so much, Todd, for coming out.
You.
And where can people find you?
Yeah, for sure. You guys can follow on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook at Free Kick Pod, and I'm doing the same little spiel that I do on my show. Right, it's just so ingrained in me. You can find the website, thefreekick.net, wherever you get your podcast, The Free Kick. And yeah, I think I covered everything right there. But it's been a blast to be on here, and I know we've been at this podcast for a long time, and it seems like anytime I'm a guest or anytime I have people on, I'm always going over an hour. And I guess that's why I'm doing a podcast, right? I love to talk, which is a story in itself where growing up, like I hated the sound of my voice. And to see myself doing podcasts now where I'm talking all the time, like I don't care what I sound like, and people tune in and listen to me, so obviously they don't care either. And so I'm doing something that I enjoy, and I think that's all we can ask for. If you're doing something that's fun, continue to do it. And that's why I'm so happy to see you guys do a podcast, do a vlog, because there's not enough union content. The more, the better.
Right.
And I was going to say to you, Jillian, like listening to your first episode you guys did, like I can tell you found your voice. Like you're getting more comfortable in front of the mic, in front of the camera. And I'm like, okay, you two definitely have good chemistry together. I guess that's why you guys got married in the first place. So, I'm so glad you guys decided to do a podcast and to invite me on the podcast. And whenever I get invited on shows, it means a lot to me that people are like, hey, you want to come onto the podcast? So thank you guys so much for having me on the show. And I look forward to all the uploads you guys have, because you guys are doing a fantastic job, and it's another voice into this just small community we have.
We appreciate that.
And yeah, we appreciate it, because you're right. That's the one thing we want to do. And I think another reason you and I get along is we want to build this union fan community. Like we want to see this. And I know you've said this before. We're doing this because we love the union. We want to see them grow. But also in 70 years from now, we want to see packed houses at the looking down. We want to see packed houses at Super Bowl Park, wherever the stadium is. You know what I'm saying? So we appreciate it. And we'll definitely maybe during the season this year, if we do some interviews, we're still figuring out our kind of what we're going to do during the season, but we'll definitely have you back on. So thank you again.
I was going to say, well, I hear that there's a podcast coming up soon where you guys are supposed to get invited on that podcast, and I also got invited on that podcast. So maybe you guys haven't heard about it yet, but
I have not heard about that yet.
but I'm sure we'll be seeing each other very soon. So
Awesome, man. Well, hey, thank you again. And so you guys can follow us as well on our podcast. We're on Twitter at TOTWAG. That's the One Team We Agree On. And we're also on Facebook and Instagram at the One Team We Agree On, all one word. But for next time, I'm Kyle.
I'm Jillian.
And we'll see you next time. Happy 2023, everybody.